Good afternoon. My name is Gabriel Eyes, and as chairman of the Associated Student Speakers Program, I'd like to welcome you to our 12th program of the fall quarter. We're most pleased to have with us two of the finest actors.
Excuse me, would you repeat your name? I didn't get it.
Gabe.
Gabe?
Yeah.
Elias?
Right.
One of the first things in theater is to be understood.
Thank you, Mr. Lemmon. We're most pleased to have with us two of the finest actors in show business today, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. Mr. Lemmon has just recently finished directing his first picture called Koch, in which Mr. Matthau stars in as a 72-year-old man. He looks about 72. We're going to go straight into a question and answer period, and we have roving mics. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand so that everybody in the auditorium can hear you, and we'll bring a mic to you. Could we please start now with any questions from the audience? First question.
Thank you very much.
Yes, could somebody get a mic over here?
You don't really need a mic. Speak up. Here, you can have this one.
It's not working.
It's not working.
While we're waiting for a mic, I'd like
I'll
to tell
speak
a
loud.
little story.
Oh, it's working?
Can everybody hear me? There was a theater I passed recently, and it said Anne of 1,000 Days. And right across the title was the legend, Last 2 Days.
By strange coincidence, your picture happens to be in the Daily Bruin. And
Whose picture?
Yours.
Mine.
And yours.
Now you're talking.
And I'm an autograph seeker, and I would be very honored if you could autograph.
I don't know what your name is, but you got more chutzpah. We'll do it later. Let's ask questions.
Where's our next question? Over there. Somebody get a mic there?
How did you choose the name Koch for your picture? And why Koch?
It's short for the name Kocher, Joseph P. Kocher, which is the name of the character that Walter plays. It was taken from a novella or a short novel by a woman named Catherine Topkins, and that was the original title. We stuck with it purely for that reason.
Did you ever think of changing the K to a
yes.
C?
No. We thought maybe of changing it to Koch 23, anything to help sell it, but or Crotch 21, anything. But actually, no, as usual, people are always suggesting changing titles, you know, and there was various times when the studio suggested possibility of changing titles. I think that any title is a good title if it's simple to remember, and if the picture is successful, then this title suddenly is a great title. Koch is fortunately successful, and so people say Koch. It is an odd name. It's just a nickname for Kocher. I remember once I did a picture called with Judy Holliday years ago. Phffft.
George Axelrod.
Yeah, George Axelrod wrote it. And they stopped production, which costs about, at that point on a big film, it cost, anywhere from $5,000 to $1,000 an hour. For 2 hours, we stopped production while they had a meeting upstairs at Columbia Films about a title change. And finally, the director came back down about $7,000 later, beaming, and he said, "We changed the title." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's still, but they took an F out." and that's typical of
Would you
Hollywood.
tell about your name and Harry Cohn?
Oh, yeah, Harry Cohn wanted to change. They love to change names, too, you know. And after I had done my first film, which also was with Judy Holliday, I had yet to meet Harry Cohn, who was then alive, and he was the feared ogre and head of Columbia Films, one of the last of the great giants. And he called me up into his office, And he had a whip on his desk. And after we had shaken hands, he kept pounding his desk saying, "You're going to change that name, Lemmon. The critics will use it like a ball bat. They'll kill you with it." And I said, "I don't want to change it." So we went back and forth, and he said, "You can't have a name, Lemmon." I said, "Well, there's two M's in it. At least I got a little saving grace there, you know." And I said, "How often can critics say lemon is a lemon or whatever, you know?" And he said, "Too often, and they're going to change." And I said, "I'm not going to change it." And I said, "What do you want me to change it to?" He said, "Lennon." I said, "What?" He said, "Lennon, Lennon. That's all." And I said, "And you pronounce it Lennon?" And he said, "Yeah." And so straight I looked at him. You know, I gave him a straight look, and I said, "They'll think I'm a Russian revolutionary." He says, "No, I looked that up. It's Lenin." He was serious, but I didn't change anything. They always want to change everything.
There's a question right there.
I'm sorry. Well, this is I got it. This is directed to Mr. Lemmon. Not Lenin. Confidentially, I'm more interested in ecology than I am in Koch.
I don't blame you.
Now, I know that you did a very good thing. I think it was called the slow guillotine, if I'm not mistaken. What is the acting industry doing regarding this all-important catastrophe that we're now confronted with? It seems to me that they're in a very great position to bring this to the people, and I don't see that they're really doing as much as I think they should be. Do you agree with me, and what can be done?
Yes, I do to an extent. The only thing that citizens who happen to be in the industry in the capacity that I am in, the only thing they can do is what I do, and that is do a show when they can get the show. And because of their name, get it hopefully presented in front of the people to explain, you know, the problems that exist on a much deeper level than the public really understands. But it isn't really the people within the industry in my capacity, because there's nothing I can do as far as getting a show done. It's up to the networks. You have no idea the problem we had getting that show on, despite the fact that that show won every single award there is, the Emmys, the DuPont Award, the this, the that, everything else. And got great acceptance around the country, and actually did a tremendous amount of good. When we went to do another show, I've done one a year practically with Don Widener, the same fellow who wrote and produced it. When we came to the next one, which was more, instead of just air pollution in our cities, it was concerned more with the general pollution of the world on all phases. NBC still would not put it on all its stations as a network show. They only put it on the O&Os, as they call it, which is the owned and operated NBC stations, which means that it hits only the major cities, about 6 or 7, maybe 8 major cities, and they show it once or twice. That also won an Emmy. Still, they won't do it. The reason being that money, as usual, is behind everything and is more important than life or death to most businessmen. It most definitely is, in my opinion, which is why we are on a very suicidal bent. And they're afraid. They say people don't care about ecology. So at the same token, they'll take out a big full-page ad the next day in the trade papers and so forth, or they'll continually tell us in the press that they are very, very aware of public service, and they do so much public service. For instance, I am now chairman of the Christmas Seals, which is, of course, is tied up with ecology. I've done many spots for them and done others. I've yet to see them in prime time because the network doesn't get paid when they air those. If I can get a couple of toothpicks and stay up until 2 in the morning watching an old movie, sometimes I'll suddenly, there I am, because now they're giving us about 20 or 30 seconds of free time. In other words, the problem rests with those bastards that run and control the airways and the media.
So please don't pick on the actors.
We're divine.
The actors are always in the forefront of any decent, good, progressive, liberal cause.
Like John
Most
Wayne.
actors.
Hey, can I tell a John
Reagan
Wayne
was
story?
never an actor.
I get it. This is done certainly with no malice. I just heard it yesterday for the first time. I think it's one of the most delightful actor stories I ever heard because it is sworn to be true to me by the second assistant. What's the name of the picture that George Stevens did years ago, the big religious epic, not the Bible, but Greatest Story Ever Told. And John Wayne had, I think, one line in it. And his line was, I can't imitate John Wayne. Thank God. But John Wayne had the line, he is truly the Son of God. And they got to it, and he said, he is truly the Son of God. And George Stevens said, cut, stop. No, John, the reverence must be there. I mean, you're completely struck when you realize this. Read it with awe. And he said, he is truly the Son of God. That's a true story. Anyway, that's absolutely irrelevant, but anyhow. Except he's a friend of Ronnie's. Anyway, where were we?
Go ahead, right here.
This is directed towards Mr. Matthau. You and Mr. Lemmon worked together in The Fortune Cookie and I guess learned to work with each other as actors. Was it difficult for you or easier for you to work with Mr. Lemmon as a director since having the earlier experience of The Fortune Cookie, which in fact was a great movie?
Thank you. It was very easy to work with Lemmon on Koch. And I don't know whether working with him as an actor in Fortune Cookie and The Odd Couple had anything to do with it, because I found it very easy to work with him in those, too. His shining intelligence will overcome any lack of talent possibly would have. So it was a snap, a cinch, and a terrific joy.
God bless you, sir. You're a remarkable person.
I'm addressing my question to Mr. Lemmon. Do you think that being an actor has given you a different perspective on directing, be it a better one or a different one that has not been used before?
Well, it certainly wouldn't be one probably that hasn't been used before. I think that being an actor, if you then decide to direct, can or cannot, the fact that you were an actor can or cannot have been of value. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have other talents to be a director, but it may very well mean that in one area and one area alone, that is the understanding of the actor's problems, I think it may be of a help, yes, because having been an actor, understanding how actors work and think, very often you work with very talented directors who really do not communicate with the actors because they don't quite understand the actor's problems. There, I think it's an advantage, but that's the only advantage there is to it.
There was a person who was a director, I won't name him, but he was at dramatic school at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and Sciences, and someone said to him, Bill, you can't act and you can't write, so why don't you become a director?
Mr. Lemmon, did you use any new ideas that have not been used before in directing your movie?
No. The only the only approach really I had was a very general one, and that was to be as simple as possible and as unobtrusive in the direction, so that ultimately, if, for instance, somebody enjoyed the film, they would not be talking about the director. They might, maybe a day later, if they hopefully were still talking about it, they might suddenly say, hey, wait a minute, who directed that? Somebody must have directed it. That would be a very good compliment, in other words. I tried to keep it as simple as possible so that the audience would not be aware of direction and be involved with the people.
I have another story to tell. My father-in-law is 87 years old, and he's very much like a director. He's a consultant for the aircraft industries. He's an electronics engineer. And when he became a consultant, he was unhappy, and I asked him why. He said, there was a leader of cats. It was a very tough old tomcat who leading his cats, leaped across a picket fence one day and was emasculated. He was on the other side of the fence crying bitterly. When the other cats came over and said, don't cry, you can be our consultant. That's what a director is.
Mr. Matthau, you said that actors are and should be at the forefront of what is good and what should be spoken up for. I was at the outside the premiere, I saw you there too, Mr. Lemmon, of Fiddler on the Roof, along with 300 other Jews protesting for Soviet Jewry. Was there not anything that you could have said to have called attention to those, sorry about my voice shaking, I'm nervous, to those 300 out there chanting and standing there for about 2 hours? Just anything. That whole fantastic production went on. Not once was it mentioned that there were 300 people out there caring about some other people in trouble.
Well, I'm a Jew, and my family are Jews, and I have relatives in the Soviet Union who are Jews, and they like it there. So I don't know what's going on. I know that more Jews have left the Soviet Union in the last 6 months than ever before in the history of the Soviet Union. So perhaps the Jews that want to get out are getting out.
Do you perhaps know about the Jews who are being shoved inside insane asylums in the Soviet Union because they are trying to protest? Do you know about the
I've read
thousands
about
and
that,
thousands
but
who want to get out of there?
I don't know
and
about it
cannot?
firsthand because my relatives that write me obviously are under some kind of censorship,
Yes.
which we aren't here in most areas. But I don't know about it. See.
I think it's only by speaking out here in a country where we have more or less a free right to do so that we can help others who can't do that.
There is a number of people. I didn't even know they were picketing there. It shows you where I was. I don't know, but I never saw them. I didn't even know about it. But
That's a Gentile for you.
that's. I do know that there is a number of people in the industry very active, doing everything they can because I get notices and mail constantly about it. Requesting either my presence or my backing, which they get, or money, which whenever I can they get. Now, how effective they are, I don't know, love.
Next question, please.
I've seen Koch, and I thought it was one of the most sensitive films I've ever seen about older
God
people,
bless you.
the older generation. And I was wondering how you prepared for your role, Mr. Matthau. Did you base it on someone that you know, or did you observe a lot of people of that age, or how did you prepare?
I really never prepare for a role. I like to say that I've been preparing for 51 years for a role, because that's what an actor is. He prepares from the minute he's conceived if he is an actor. To put it in concrete terms, there is a man that I know that gave me the hook that I wanted, from which to grapple with whatever the role was, and that's a man I know who sits on a bench in Brooklyn. He's a federal judge, and he has enormous vigor. He's 83, and he stands with magnificent bearing. My posture is atrocious in real life, so I was very aware of that aspect of it. And just having that hook, a great writer once said, if you know one thing about a person, you have the beginning of a novel or a story. Just one thing, and just go from there. And that's what I did with Koch. I just realized that he was a man of dignity and bearing and strength and vigor, and there was no reason to play him any other way, the way we used to play old men in dramatic school. You know, we went to dramatic school, a man was 55 years old, and we'd play him like, you know, and it just was no good. Matter of fact, my first Broadway play, I played a very old man. I played an 86-year-old bishop in Anne of a Thousand Days, Rex Harrison. And I don't know, are you allowed to say dirty words here?
Oh, go ahead.
I came out, Harry Irvine was playing the role, but he had a heart attack that night. He had a heart attack 2 or 3 times a month, as a matter of fact. And this night, he wasn't able to go on. Rex Harrison was Henry VIII, and he was very frightened and nervous about me playing the old English bishop, because the third week in rehearsal, the director said to me, "Walter, you said you were British. You're not British." I said, "Oh, British? I thought you said Yiddish." And so it went, and so that was kind of a funny thing in the company. Everybody was British, but I was Yiddish, and I was playing Bishop Fisher. And when the man who was 75 years old said, "But Bishop Fisher is the eldest and wisest amongst us, and so he will speak first," I went center stage and played an old man very badly, you know. I said, "I've known you from a child, King Henry. I was present when you took your first 3 steps." At which point, Harrison turned upstage and in a very loud voice, he said, "Oh, shit!" I swear to God. For the next 10 minutes, all I could hear in the audience was, "Did he say shit?" And that's what it is if you play it that way. So the only way to play an old man is to play yourself. You'll look old enough. Don't worry about it. Just gray your hair. That's all.
You know, there's a thing, forgive me, not to interrupt you, but what Walter did is escape the trap. Not now, not in public. What Walter did was to escape the trap of exactly what he's talking about, and that is to play the externals. If he's old, automatically we think he's old. He actually played him very young. In other words, the actor is good enough, finally, in his technique to assume that he's already old. But let's play this old man young and not worry about the old. So he never did play him old, but he was old. And the makeup, incidentally, was practically non-existent. There was a wig. It was just Walter's performance, really. All we did was take a few highlights, just a straight base makeup, a few highlights, and the makeup man took a regular, ordinary lead pencil that you write with and just touched the normal lines in his face, that's all, just to accentuate them slightly. The rest was just a pair of glasses and a wig, but it was Walter's performance. In other words, if you're drunk, you don't play drunk, you try to play sober. If you're good enough, and he is. You're already drunk, so to speak. The thing is to try and to pull yourself together.
Super sober.
If you're going to cry, try not to. Don't try to cry. Does this make any sense to you?
Go ahead.
Who are you people?
Are either of you going to be doing any more Neil Simon stuff?
I didn't understand what you said, dear.
Oh, are either of you going to be doing any more Neil Simon stuff?
Not me.
Not at the moment. We both probably hope so, but there isn't anything that Neil has at the moment that we know of. Although I did hear that he was trying to do a kind of potpourri of American sketch humor as either as a show or as a television special. In other words, starting way back to the beginning of sketch comedy that he was hoping we would do. But that's, I haven't seen Neil. I don't guess you have either for a while.
No, but he's got a new picture that Elaine May is directing. It's a picture that it was written by Bruce J. Friedman, and he's adapted it. But Elaine May doesn't want me for the picture. Wants my wife. That's the way things are today.
This is directed to Mr. Lemmon. I saw you in Days of Wine and Roses, and that was, I was really impressed in your dramatic interpretation of that. I just wanted to know how you got that part, you know, how I don't mean it that way. I just want to know how you got the part and how you felt about playing the role.
Well, it interested me very much because at that time, when the opportunity came along, because since the first several pictures that I had done were comedies and fortunately worked, then 90% of the scripts that were offered to me were comedies, you know, as usual. It isn't quite typecasting as much as a general putting you in a slot of comedy or drama, etc. Paul Newman at that point was going through the same thing. I remember both of us saying, Paul was saying, will you do me a favor and slide me some of your rejects and the comedies, and I'll throw you some of these damn dramas that are coming. In other words, I was looking for a change of pace, and that came along. But 20th Century Fox at that point, who was going to make the film, had second thoughts and offered to let me do anything as long as it was a comedy. They were worried about it. And then I was under contract, a non-exclusive contract to Columbia Pictures, where I already had commitments, and they were afraid of it. And Jack Warner was willing to take a chance on it. And fortunately, it was successful. But the first preview, the first sneak preview, 40 couples walked out in the first 5 minutes. And it's very simple. It's proof of what happens when you are kind of pigeonholed. They expected to see a comedy, and the picture had not been advertised. All it said was Jack Lemmon in a sneak preview. So they had their little kids maybe or something or whatever. They expected a comedy. So Warner Brothers thought they had a disaster, and they didn't, fortunately. But I'm glad that you liked it. That's how it happened anyhow. I just stuck with it for a year and a half until we finally got a deal, because I was sick of being thought of only in comedies.
Those 40 couples went out for a drink.
Yeah, I had a question for both of you, simple one. How many years did it take each of you to make it? Since
I made it right away.
A straight answer, please.
So help me God, that's a straight answer. I got out of the Army in October of '45, and I hung around Reno, Nevada, because I was switched over when they had the atom bomb ready to go off. They switched me from a combat unit to an air transport command, and they sent me to Reno. And I stayed in Reno for 2 months, enlisted at the dramatic workshop of the New School for Social Research in New York, went there, and 3 months after that I got a job as an actor, and I worked more than any other actor alive today. 'Cause I was in every television show, I was in every play. I have the modern record for plays on Broadway, 16 flops in a row. I did, every week I was on the Goodyear Philco Playhouse. I didn't realize that I was the cheapest actor there. I mean, that's why I got so many jobs. I didn't care about what it paid. I really was the cheapest actor on television. I got $250 for an hour show.
I got less.
You got less than $250?
I started out, I didn't even pay Charlie Baker, our agent. I paid him no money at first. I got $15 for I Remember Mama, half hour. I got $50 from Tony Miner on Studio One with Chuck Heston. He got 75. How do you like that? But anyway. No, we both started about the same time. Walter did more theater than I did. I got very lucky and did a tremendous amount of TV, as did Walter.
He was prettier than I was.
I was cuter. A definite, tremendous, innate charm, and a naivete, a decency that has never, ever changed with success. Not one bit.
Does that answer the question? That's a straight answer, by the way. Oh, wait,
Yeah,
Lemmon.
I would say about, I was making a living within a year and a half to 2 years. I started in '46. I got out of college, went down in February of '46, I think it was. I would say by the end of '47, beginning of '48, I was beginning to at least make a living out of either radio, soap operas, TV shows, winter stock, summer stock, etc. And that's not a very long time. Some guys have to go, decades.
Speaking of television, could you tell me why the big stars are really not making it in television this year, such as Jimmy Stewart and Shirley MacLaine? Do you feel that they're giving them bad vehicles just because they have a big name? Is that the sad story? And I hope you two don't fall into that same pitfall.
I fell into the trap because I had to pay the bills in 1958. Work was a little slow, and so I fell into the television series trap. And the reason they're failing, your audiences today are and have been getting progressively more sophisticated and demanding and critical. And what happens on television when you do a weekly show, it's mostly junk. And the audience refuses to accept a star name per se, you see. And so the junk becomes what you're seeing and not the star, and so you fail. There are some shows which have been making it, but it's very rare. It's very rare to do a good show every week. How can you create something good every week? How can you act in something good every week? You need time to replenish. I've been reading scripts now for, well, in the last 5 years, I would say I've only read 2 good scripts. And, of course, people say to me, well, why did you make that picture? Oh, my brother was, I say, well, Henry, you didn't send me my check last month. So I think it's the material now that unless you have a star performer who has something that the great mass want to see, who has something really, some external perhaps, like Robert Donat, I'd go to see him in anything,
I agree. I agree with him 100%. It's the material and the seduction on the part of the stars themselves and the studios that, gee, they're big names, so no matter what happens, they'll do it. Give them a little action adventure and run through Europe, and we got a hit. And of course you don't.
I was wondering how either of you feel about the direction that movies are moving in now, and what kind of impact this is having on the new generation, and if they should be doing something that they're not.
Which direction are the movies moving in now? Well, I think there's a backlash now to all the nudity and all the sexual innuendos, and some of them not so innuendo-ish. I think there's a backlash to that now, and I think La Traviata grossed $100 million. I think it goes under the name of Love Story now. And of course, it's a surefire thing, It's clean as hell. 2 wonderful, wholesome people, and the girl gets tuberculosis and dies. It's a terrific number. And I think the movies now, I think the moguls are a little confused. They don't know whether to do the hardcore pornography, because that is not working anymore, and besides, their friends look at them kind of shabbily, sideways, you're making your money with that kind of stuff. But they're now trying to get clean and wholesome. But they always forget that it is the play. The play is the thing. You see, but unfortunately, the banks support the pictures. The banks sponsor them. The banks put up the money for any project. And the banks have a certain kind of mentality. They want to know that what they're putting their money in has been successful last week. See? And so everybody is now trying to imitate Love Story. I understand they got a couple of lovers now running around in a wheelchair in some picture. And they're billing it as the real Love Story. And everybody's trying to make good, wonderful, sentimental slush. Well, you can do it only if you're interested in the story, if that happens to be a residual effect of your story. Pauline Kael in the New Yorker, not one of my favorite ladies, doesn't like me because I once took her to task for criticizing me. She said that I wasn't believable as a wasp. I told her that I was a social climber and that my friends were John Jacob Astor III and John Fortune Ryan III, and they were both trying to imitate me. They comb their hair the way I do, and they kind of dress the way I do, and they look like me, as a matter of fact. And they're trying to be like me, and that she was thinking of a wasp as being Robert Montgomery with a cigarette lighter in 1930 movies, which is what I think, where I think she is. She's a highly skilled writer. But recently I noticed in the New Yorker that she said that Koch was dreadful, and that it was a story about a clean old man who was mistaken for a dirty old man. She said if that had been reversed, then the picture might have had something. Now you see how cynical she is. She thinks that real life is dirty old men in high places who are pretending to be clean old men. Of course, she's got a couple of people in mind, but that wasn't what our picture was about. So I don't know which way it's going. I think now it's trying to go into the clean. It's going clean now, pictures. See, they don't understand that it doesn't make any difference whether it's clean or dirty. There is no such thing. Is it good?
Yeah.
You know, you can do Macbeth without any clothes. The only trouble you'd have is when Macbeth does the soliloquy about the dagger. Is this a dagger which I see before me?
I think that a very good thing is happening in films that unfortunately is being frustrated because of economics, and that is, well, it's a twofold thing. More young directors are coming out of the colleges and are actually getting film done in one way or another, and then finally breaking into the major ranks, so to speak. The next film I'm going to do, for instance, is going to be directed by the kid John Avildsen, who did Joe, and he's a very exciting young guy. If he walked down the street, he'd scare you to death. I mean, you can't see the face and the stud and the Indian beads and the stud and everything, but he's got the camera. He runs around with it strapped to his stomach, says, "Don't worry, we'll get it. Run over here with the thing." Terribly exciting kid to work with, and he really knows what he's doing, too, believe me. There's a lot of young guys that are beginning to break through, and I think that's good. And I think that your generation in general, far more than ours, is serious about film. They're accepting it as an art form at times. They're much more critical of it, and they're demanding more of it, and I think that's good. The unfortunate thing is that so few films are being made compared to what should be made, all because of the economics. The companies blew it 10 years ago by losing billions and billions and billions of dollars on multi-million-dollar epics, one after another. After Song of Who, what is it? Bob Weiser, the Sound of Music went out, and was such a hit. At least 20 or 25 enormous epics were made at costs of 10 to 20 and more $1 million. Every one of them practically went right down the drain.
Don't mention.
And Hello, Dolly was the one exception. And all of a sudden, the studios were stuck, and now they're petrified. They don't have the cash. The banks are reluctant to give it to them, and so there's a minimal amount of production. That's the problem. But if we can get over the economic hump, I think that films will be better than ever.
Mr. Lemmon, I saw The Great Race and enjoyed it about 3.5 times now. It'll be 4 when they show it this Sunday. And next to Peter Falk, you were my favorite in it.
Thank you. He's my favorite in it, too.
I was wondering, do you see any such character parts in your future?
Oh, sure, yeah. If it comes along, I think Walter and I probably would both agree. I don't, and never have looked for a kind of part. I don't care what it is. Absolutely, I couldn't care what the part is, as long as the part grabbed me, and the script grabbed me, and then who am I going to work with? In other words, who's the director? If such a part came along and excited me and they wanted me, great, I'd jump, no matter what the part.
I get the impression you really enjoyed making that film, all of you, because it was...
Yes. Oh, yeah, it was great fun. Again, this goes right back to what I was saying. The film started out, it was, of course, an expensive film, because it was all through Europe and here, and it was supposed to be an auto race around the world. It was supposed to cost $6 million. It ended up costing 12-something. It has grossed close to $26 million, and it has not broken even. Because it comes between 2.5 to 3 times your negative cost before you go into profit. That's one of the reasons why the business is in trouble.
I'd like to direct this question to Jack. Can you tell us what it was like behind the scenes in the movie Some Like It Hot? And also, were you jealous that Tony Curtis got to play the part with Marilyn Monroe?
Hell no, I had the best part, baby.
Or were you satisfied with Joey Brown?
What was the last part?
Or were you satisfied with Joey Brown?
He's cute. No, Some Like It Hot was actually a very important turning point in my career. It, to me, it was a great part, was the best part in it, I think, because it had more latitude and more appeal, really, whereas Tony's was a much straighter part. In telling you what it's like behind the scenes, I could, it's hard work, is all. We all got along famously. It was my first introduction to Billy Wilder, who is very close to me and my favorite writer-director, and we've, from that point on, had a very close professional and personal relationship. And Monroe I loved. Tony always has been a friend of mine.
He used to get speech lessons from Tony.
Yonder is the castle of my father.
Yeah, in the end of the movie, the fortune cookie, you, Mr. Lemmon, jumped out of bed and grabbed a hold of a horizontal bar and started doing some tricks on it. Were you ever a gymnast?
No. Just unbelievably talented. That's all.
All right, right here.
In Calendar this Sunday, I saw that you were doing some sort of James Thurber thing. You were actually playing a character who is based on Thurber himself.
Yes. It is not called James Thurber because it is a fictional story, but it is. We have Mel Shavelson and Danny Arnold, who wrote it and are director and producer. They did My World and Welcome to It. I don't know if you ever saw that a few years ago. It was a TV series, and it was pretty good. So it went off, of course. But it had to do with the cartoonist, and that's where their first interest came. They got the rights from Mrs. Thurber to all of Thurber's works, and to Thurber himself as a character. So it is involved with a man named Peter Wilson, a cartoonist, but like Thurber, he is going blind, and eventually does go blind. Very funny. And it is a comedy with a serious story. In other words, we tend to put the label comedy or drama or whatever on it. It's not. It's a comedy, drama, love story, really. But it is based on Thurber.
One last question.
This question is directed to both of you. What do you feel is harder to do, comedy or drama? And of the two, which do you feel you've done your best role in? Had your best role in and your best performance?
That's a snap. Comedy is the difficult side of drama. Drama is the whole. It's subdivided by comedy and tragedy. Comedy does not necessarily mean funny. Comedy is the more difficult because fewer people can do it. And certainly the message that one wants to communicate, in my particular case, is more easily communicated through the medium of comedy. And since there is such a scarcity of comedians, not comics, comedians, I think comedy is indeed the more difficult and the more satisfying.
What do you think was your best role? Best thing you played?
What was that? What's my best role? Oh. I pass that question. Couldn't answer it truthfully or honestly or fully enough.
You know what happens, possibly, I know why he says it. I'd probably tend to say the same thing. You think that when you get a part that you love, and it came out pretty well, then you think, my God, that's my favorite, and that's the best thing I've ever done. Until the next one comes along, and then emotionally, if that ever happens again, if you get lucky, then that kind of erases it, and it's difficult to really pinpoint one. But I agree exactly with what Walter said, and I think that basically comedy, there is a subtlety and an accuracy about comedy that you must have to a greater extent than in drama. The content of drama itself and a scene that works pretty good will satisfy. But in comedy, there's that onus of does it work or doesn't it? There's nothing in between, really. They laughed or they didn't, or the message got there, be it a subtle look, a take, a piece of timing, whatever, can throw a whole scene. Yes, to that extent, yes. The advantage of doing things over again doesn't necessarily mean you're not just repeating a mistake, because you can't time. There again, also, all the aspects of comedy are more difficult because when you get in the editing room and you're starting to put together a comedic scene, you can butcher it even if the actors did it well. Sometimes you can correct a mistake. You can realize that that beat was too long. But all you can do once you preview a film is to juggle with the editing. There's nothing you can do about the performance. And the man never had a chance to do it in front of an audience. It's very tough.
Thank you both for coming. Thank you all.
Thank you.